I met Abhishek in probably year 2001 or so, or maybe 2003, something like that. The great Ishmael Merchant, who's no longer with us, was a good friend, and he was staying with me. And then I was on my way to India. And then he said, oh, there is one person you must meet if you're going to Bangalore, and his name is Abhishek Podar. I had no idea who Abhishek was. And in usual Ismail fashion, he's like, just meet. There's just no outcome. So I came and I went to his office, and first of all, I was blown away by the art that was on the walls. And at that time, he had Tasveer Gallery, which was just in the basement of his office. And that's the first time I got exposed to the passion that Abhishek has about art. For the longest time, I didn't even know his family had other businesses that actually did something completely different. So Abhishek, you are from a business family, but you started collecting art since you were in school. So how did that start, and what got you hooked?
So I guess I'd always lived around art at home, but it was a chance meeting with Hussain when I was about 15. He was waiting at a bus stop in Calcutta, and I first didn't think it was him until the car moved forward and I turned around and he wasn't wearing his shoes. So I asked the driver to turn around and come back there, and I got off and I said, Hussain Saab. So he said, firstly, how do you know it's me? I said, you're not wearing shoes. So he said, yes, it is me. I said, you seem to be waiting for the bus. Can I drop you somewhere? He said, I'm actually waiting for someone to fetch me, and he's not here. So would you mind waiting with me until he comes? So I said, sure. And that 10-minute conversation got us talking, and he said, where do I live? And it was literally 200 meters from the home. So I pointed to it. He said, why don't I come and have a cup of tea with you tomorrow? He did. And Calcutta, my place became his home in Calcutta for many years. So it was literally at that young age that, we painted on the same canvas together, and he exposed me to so much about Indian art. So it was serendipitous incidents like that that really got me interested.
I didn't even know he was going to talk about Hussain. Talking about Without Shoes, my husband and I were in London airport once. And he looks at somebody and says, Lakshmi, I think that's Hussain. And we immediately looked down, and he didn't have any shoes. I just said, I'm going to go talk to him. He said, what are you going to tell him? I said, I have no idea. I'm just going to go talk to him. So I just went and talked to him and had him give me a little autograph. But I can understand how little things like that go a long way. And then you have, yes, that is something where you're interested in somebody, maybe even buy one of his paintings. But about collecting enough and then saying, I want to create a museum out of this. So what started that?
I think it was seeing the lack of good museums in India. We have the greatest art, but it's like a punishment going to an Indian museum. I think most of us are taken from school, and the real thing we go there for is the ice cream at the end of the trip, not to see the art. But yet, whenever we travel overseas, we would stand in queues for half an hour and go to a museum there. So obviously, it means we are interested in art, but the experience we have back home is not so great. And when India has the best of everything, why should it have such poor museums? It was really that, and because I didn't have that growing up here, that I said, let's do something and try and change that.
It's, we have plans, and then things happen to plans. You decide, I've been talking to Abhishek since this was an idea. And I remember he auctioned all his personal collection to raise the money and all that stuff, picked the land, bought the space, you started doing it, COVID happens. And the launch gets delayed by a couple of years, if not more. So, and I won't even go into the troubles he went through to, doing something else. To do a world-class museum here, this man has put in more effort than anyone I know. So but I think you made a very interesting transformation in MAP because of the delay. So tell us about it.
It was, I think, one of the first Zoom calls in the pandemic. The entire team had this long face, and we said, what are we going to do now? And the unanimous decision was that though we had announced our opening going to be in December 20, now the whole world would understand, so let's obviously move it to whenever we can. And I said, no, we've given a commitment, we have to open. And they said, but who the hell can come? Because the whole world is shut down. And that's when we said we'll do a digital opening. And Lakshmi, where we would have had a physical opening with 130 people in our auditorium, we had 30,000 people come for our digital opening.
Yeah. And I was there. It was one of the most beautiful openings, spectacularly, visually beautiful, really.
So it was really something that forced us to look in a direction we would have otherwise never ventured to do.
Yeah.
And it was really, it wasn't me, it was the great people on our board, on our advisory panel who said the world's never going to be the same again. Forget about opening it physically, just do it digitally.
It's so true. I think during the pandemic, I think those who could pivot and take advantage of it, because as you said, instead of 100 people, you can reach 1 million people now, you know. And I think it was very important to go through the transformation. I mean, even for us, I thought, will we even survive? Because we all do physical events, right? But it's really the digital world that has given us a breather. And continuing on that, because at the museum, it's not just the art. You know, there are a lot of ideas in terms of, I mean, one thing I've learned about Abhishek is that even when you go to his office, every object has a meaning. You know, which photographs are on the staircase versus on top of the staircase versus the steel that goes through. Okay, everything is thought through. So like you have a sculpture and desk by Eric Levy when people come in. So tell me about your vision for what you wanted this museum to be.
Well, I'll first talk about the sculpture with Arik Levy, which is behind us. That was really a take on the many mountains we had to move to make MAP happen and the balancing act we had to do between the government, the stakeholders, the pandemic, and everything. But our vision for the museum was quite different before we started working, during the pandemic, and now that we've opened. So I've realized if you have an idea and you stick with that, it's not necessarily the best one. You've got to keep adapting and doing what's needed because it may be the best thing that you think, but if it's not relevant, it's going to get nowhere. We didn't have anything planned around technology when we were thinking about this. My CTO used to joke that, you know, he had a room in the basement and now he has the corner office. So it was the result of what happened that we had to adapt. So
yeah. And also, I think, you know, your personal collection of about 7,000 pieces are there, and then you had bequeathed collection of about 60,000 pieces. And, you know, in most of the museums, I mean, this was very surprising to me when I found out, even in the large museums, almost 90% of their collection is just in storage, you know, very
99.
99, yeah, very little is shown. And I think you've really, tell us how you've used technology, et cetera, to be able to showcase everything you have in your collection instead of just keeping it, or how do you rotate it? What do you do to make sure this entire collection is seen?
So I think, like most museums, we show only a fraction of what we have. But digitally, we've done two things. You know, very often you go to a museum and they say, oh, but the show you've come to see just got over last week. So you can never see that show again. And we said at MAP, that's never going to happen. If you come here 10 years later, you'll be able to see any show that we've done up till then. So the picture you see up is of our digital gallery. We have this gallery which has screens all around. And at the click of any button, you can choose from a menu of all the shows that we've had. And because when we opened, we didn't have any shows from before. We had about a dozen shows that we did for the gallery. And you click whichever show you want to see, set the timer, and in a second, it changes to that exhibition. So that becomes a great way of looking at stuff which would otherwise just be in storage. Plus, through Cumulus, which is our digital collection management software, you can look at any collection, anything from the collection on these large screens that we have in the lobby of the museum. And you can take a picture, you can enlarge it, you get all the information.
It's true, and I think it's just not looking at the object, being able to move it, turn it, you can see it in many different ways. Now, continuing to talk on the technology, now the most controversial topic right now is AI-generated art. So do you think it's trespassing human space or enhancing human space? What do you think about it?
I think it's enhancing human space. Um, it's a tool. Uh, when photography came, people didn't think it was art because it was not you making it, but the gadget making it. The computer came so many years ago, people used that to make art. So this is just another tool. It's still going to be how you direct it and what it can do and how you manipulate that. And at the end of the day, it's still the mind of the person, which would be the person creating the art. This is only helping you do it.
Right. I mean, you do things like Encyclopedia of Art. You've been open for 7 months. You've been doing all these shows. Tell us a little bit about Encyclopedia of Art, and also talk about how do we sustain this? How do you sustain this?
So it's quite surprising. We, as a country, are over 75 years of age, and India doesn't have an Encyclopedia of Indian Art. So when this came up to our board that we should be doing it, it was a project that one of our colleagues came up with. And we realized that if we did a museum, it's only going to be people who come to Bangalore, because at that time we hadn't even thought of doing a digital museum. But an encyclopedia would be used by anyone and everyone around the world. So this was a project we had to do. The board shot it down. They said, we don't have the money to do it. You either do a museum or the academy. And I said, but well, this is really needed, and India needs this, and I'm going to do it. And they said, but how will we come up with the money? I said, don't worry, we will. We have now 30 people who work on the Encyclopedia of Indian Art. It's online, so anybody can access it. We launched it last year, and the New York Times gave us half a page. And all the money we needed came.
Yeah.
And now the board says this was a great idea that we had.
Great. I think you answered it in terms of the way to sustain yourself is keep doing good work and make sure people see it, because I think everybody who hears it wants to be part of it some way.
Yeah, I think it's been a very collaborative process. We have now 100 founders in the museum. We stopped taking founders the day we opened, and we did this by invitation. We have some of the best names from India and around the world. And when you really do work selflessly, I think the universe comes together and helps you do it. So I can't say MAP is something I've done. I've just been one small part of that. But I'm so glad that now we have the support we need. And hopefully we should soon get the corpus we need to keep it sustainable.
Absolutely. Thank you, and I hope all of you get to visit MAP. It's an amazing visual feast.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abhishek.